A chapter that looks ordinary but has a very deep meaning of life, starting from the importance of life to human lives that cannot be underestimated, an opportunity for forgiveness to compassion for Sukuna, Yuji has given it. Besides that, for Yuji, human life is something very valuable. Even as a Jujutsu sorcerer, Yuji is willing to sacrifice himself in order to help others as much as possible. But that is all in contrast to Sukuna. He considers humans as another object. For Sukuna, human life is an object to spend time, whether it is to be eaten, killed, or invited to fight. Sukuna never considers humans as something that can fill his heart, so feelings such as care and love are things he really doesn't care about or even hates. In this chapter, two perspectives on how to interpret a life will come into conflict. We will hear a conversation between Yuji and Sukuna, a one-on-one dialogue that might seem ordinary and unimportant, but carries significant meaning and conflict between the two characters. In this chapter, we will discover Yuji's purpose in bringing Sukuna to this place and how Sukuna will respond. Additionally, we will be given clues about Yuji's domain. Ladies and gentlemen, this is chapter 265 of Jujutsu Kaisen, but before that, I hope you will like and subscribe, and let's get started. The chapter begins with a continuation of the mysterious phenomenon we saw at the end of the last chapter. So after Yuji used his domain expansion, he and Sukuna entered a mysterious place, a place with a view of the real world, but as if it were in a different dimension. Just like us, Sukuna looks confused about what happened. At first, Sukuna thought that this was a phenomenon when sorcerers connected to each other in their subconscious with their opponents while fighting. What is meant is the phenomenon when we see Sukuna talking to his opponent before they die. And according to Sukuna, this is a side effect because curse energy is created from human emotions. But Sukuna felt that the phenomenon he was currently experiencing was something different. That's why, while leaving the station, he asked Yuji if this was his domain. But Yuji apparently didn't know exactly what was going on. Yuji admitted that he just wanted to be given time to chat with Sukuna, and he hoped Sukuna would give Yuji some time to talk. So it's possible that this phenomenon is a manifestation of Yuji's hope that ultimately also applied to his domain. It is known that the place visited by Sukuna and Yuji himself is Yuji's childhood town, Kitakami. Although born in Sendai, Yuji had lived in the city until he was 6 or 7 years old with his grandfather, and after that, they returned to Sendai, where Yuji finally met Sukuna's finger. 10 years after moving to Sendai, Yuji once returned to Kitakami to visit the funeral of his grandfather's friend. It was then that Yuji discovered that the town had become increasingly deserted. Although Yuji himself was neither surprised nor saddened, he rather took it as a natural thing. But it was in the town of Kitakami that Yuji had memories of his childhood with his grandfather, who was like a parent. So after leaving the station, Yuji took Sukuna to visit various locations full of memories. At each location, Yuji told about the memories of the place and his childhood, while Sukuna could only listen while occasionally sending curses. Starting from the park where Yuji used to play, the farm where Yuji was often taken by his grandfather to the location of the snow festival event, Yuji continued to tell about his past, which seemed trivial. But not only talking, Yuji and Sukuna even went shrimp fishing together and competed with each other in archery. The two of them spent time like uncles and nephews enjoying their time together until Sukuna finally got fed up and asked Yuji to get to the point. Sukuna said that all of Yuji's stories were disgusting to him. As a result, this is where Yuji begins to reveal his heart about a philosophy that he holds but has evolved along with his fighting. So previously, Yuji thought that as a human, he just needed to understand his role and apply it to the fullest. Yuji is willing to do anything to help his colleagues and finish off the enemies. So even if he needed to sacrifice his life, Yuji was always ready to do so. And Yuji thought that if he died after fulfilling his role, he would get a proper death. But now, Yuji felt that such thinking was not entirely true. Now, Yuji believes that as a human being, fulfilling a noble role is not the only purpose of life. Because in fact, even trivial and simple activities can be roles for humans that make their lives worthwhile. Even if humans don't have that simple role, as long as they can still eat, relieve themselves, and sleep, their lives are not meaningless. Even if they can only lie sick in their beds, even if they have no relationship with other people during their lives, as long as the memories of those people still exist in this world, no matter how small it is, their lives still have meaning. So, the value of a person's life is not only seen by how they died. Yuji really hates those who think that human life has no value, like Mahito and Sukuna. So in front of Sukuna, Yuji stated that he hated him very much. For Yuji, humans are not tools that are born with predetermined roles. So Yuji strongly opposes Sukuna's view that humans are objects to pass the time. The point is that Yuji highly values every human life as something valuable, no matter whether human nature is good or bad. That is the idealism that Yuji instills in himself. And Yuji's reason for telling Sukuna the memory of his hometown is also related to his own idealism. Yuji wants to show the human life that Sukuna considers worthless, a simple life that is far from the fight but very valuable. Maybe from there, Sukuna can get a new perspective and correct his idealism. But Sukuna said that he didn't feel anything. Sukuna admitted that he understood everything Yuji said. Sukuna understands that weak people consider a simple life as valuable. But Sukuna still couldn't feel emotion and care for them. Just like Yuji, who didn't feel sad when his hometown became more and more deserted, Sukuna also felt nothing for the creatures he considered weak. So, even if they die and suffer a disaster, Sukuna considers it a natural thing. Hearing all of Sukuna's answers, Yuji felt that everything he revealed to him was useless. Yuji actually thought that Sukuna's idealism would not collapse that easily. So Yuji's attempt to change Sukuna's outlook on life has failed. Sukuna actually insulted Yuji and said that his efforts were very stupid. He also asked if Yuji's hatred for him was only limited to this. But suddenly Sukuna realized something, and it turns out that this is not a form of Yuji's hatred. That's why Sukuna asked if maybe Yuji was pitying him. Is Yuji's attempt to change his idealism his way of showing mercy? And firmly, Yuji confirmed Sukuna's question. Even though Yuji really hated Sukuna, he thought that his outlook on life was very sad. So instead of showing anger, Yuji first showed his compassion. Like a Buddha, Yuji showed his compassion for the evil figure and gave Sukuna a chance to repent. Because actually, Yuji was very confident that he could kill Sukuna even though he refused. Finally, Yuji threatened Sukuna to repent by freeing Megumi and returning to his body, because if not, Yuji was ready to actually execute him. And hearing that, Sukuna was furious. Feeling that he was being pitied, Sukuna said that Yuji's way of thinking was in a big misunderstanding. As if to say that he would never repent, Sukuna was even more intent on showing his cruelty. Sukuna will not be satisfied with just slaughtering Yuji. He also intends to kill all humans that Yuji considers very valuable. Sukuna intends to reaffirm his idealism. So this is where two opposing ideals will clash. That's the full story of chapter 265 of Jujutsu Kaisen, a chapter full of dialogue about idealism and contains quite deep meaning for these two characters. But before we discuss anything else, there are 2 points that are also mentioned in this chapter. First, about the phenomenon that happened to Yuji and Sukuna. In this chapter, Yuji mentioned that he wanted to have time to talk one-on-one with Sukuna, and Yuji's wish might have materialized into his domain. So this phenomenon may indeed be part of Yuji's domain. But instead of immediately executing his opponent, Yuji did a kind of judgment on him first. Earlier, we saw that each of Yuji's domain signatures refer to the Siddhagarbha Buddha Mudra. This Buddha is also known for his vow to save all living beings by guiding them. So the initial phase of Yuji's domain will be a form of guidance from Yuji to Sukuna so that he wants to repent. The next point is about the certainty of Nobara's death. Since the Shibuya incident arc, Nobara's fate is still a mystery in this story. Gege Akutami, whose fate hangs in the balance, makes many readers also hope that she will return. But in the latest interview, Gege had said that he planned to part with Nanami and Nobara in the Shibuya incident. And the word parting there is widely assumed that Nobara has indeed died. This assumption is further strengthened by the arrival of this latest chapter. Because as we know, Nobara's face also appears in the row of Yuji's closest people who have died. So now the biggest possibility is that Nobara is confirmed dead. Or if you still want to hope, let's just say that this panel is just an assumption from Yuji's point of view and the assumption could be wrong. But in terms of probability, 99% Nobara is dead. Finally, we enter the dialogue between Sukuna and Yuji, which is the beginning of the confrontation of their idealism. So the reason Yuji brought Sukuna to dialogue was to emphasize his idealism. Yuji feels that Sukuna's view of life is too sad, a view that considers that human life is meaningless, other than to satisfy his pleasure. Sukuna, who was endowed with great strength, probably only saw humans by how strong they were. So simple things that are far from fighting are something foreign to him. Therefore, Yuji tried to show Sukuna a simple life through his childhood memories. Yuji intends to emphasize his idealism to Sukuna that human life is valuable no matter how trivial their lives are. From that conclusion, Yuji wanted to make Sukuna reconsider his view of life. Although in fact, Yuji already thought that Sukuna would still not want to repent. So all of Yuji's efforts in this chapter, in the end, ended up provoking Sukuna's anger. Feeling pitied, Sukuna even more tries to reaffirm his idealism. By giving a more violent threat to Yuji, Sukuna seemed to emphasize that he would not change his view of life. So from this dialogue, two assertions of idealism occur between Yuji and Sukuna. They will prove to each other who is the most correct. And narratively, the more Sukuna is provoked to reject Yuji's idealism, the more he will look pathetic when he loses later. Sukuna will be made aware that everything he rejects and considers worthless is actually the source of his disaster. This is the role and importance of this dialogue-filled chapter. In the next chapter, we will probably see the next phase of Yuji's domain. Either we will hear the affirmation of idealism from Sukuna's point of view, or we will enter the main phase. So after the judgment phase is over, we will probably enter Sukuna's execution phase. And that's probably the complete explanation that is very meaningful in this chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. If you have another point of view, please give your opinion. iits'Nime, like and subscribe. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye, guys.